In this video, I'll show you how I made $100,000 per month as a solopreneur in the AI space. That is no employees, no contractors, and really just me, plus a bunch of leveraged systems and artificial intelligence. Should note that none of this is theoretical. I actually built out this whole roadmap for the exact business that I'm operating today over the course of the last few years, and I've really just been implementing on that roadmap ever since. So this video is essentially going to be a summary of that roadmap, distilled into 4 key phases that you and anybody watching can implement to achieve similar levels of success to me. Also, a lot of people are doing this right now. It's not just me at the $100,000 a month as an AI solopreneur. There are dozens, if not hundreds of people starting businesses right around this time that are taking advantage of the unlocked leverage of AI to do this sorts of stuff. And we're going to talk a little bit about that in a minute. So as I've mentioned, we're looking at 4 phases here, and these are distinct steps that I followed throughout my journey. We'll start with my own story before I show you how you can actually practically implement this yourself. The first step was front-loading client acquisition as quickly as humanly possible. Now, I know what a lot of people are thinking. Nick, are you just telling us to get clients? Yeah, I am. And no shit, right? But I don't think a lot of people put as much value on this step as they probably should. And I'm going to talk about some concrete ways that I got my first few customers and clients ASAP. Now, the reason why this is so valuable is because if you think about it, like clients and customers aren't just a part of a business. They're actually the entire business. If you have no clients or customers, what you have is a fancy knickknack that you work on during the weekends. You don't actually have the rest of the company. You could build out the most amazing backend of your AI automation agency or content writing company or videography business or whatever, but it means nothing at all unless you have people going through that system, right? So in addition, what a lot of people think about when they start a business is they think that they're at like the start line, okay? So they think that they're, I don't know, like let's say we have a graph, right? They think they're at the 0 point. The reality is, when you start a business, you're not at the 0 point. Where you're at is you're actually at like -100. You're at -1,000, actually. When you start, you're already in debt. Alex Hormozi and a couple other people talk about this, but you're in skill debt, technical debt, client management debt. You're in a ton of debt, essentially, that will compound very fast unless you consciously and intentionally manage it and control it. And that's why you need to get your first customer ASAP. I would recommend getting your first customer knowing what I know now before you even build out your product. Go and find some contracts, lock those things down, and then worry about building out the rest of the systems later. But that's an aside. Let's talk about what I actually did. So when I first started I started a number of businesses. My door-to-door agency back when I was in my early 20s and more baby-faced than I am now. You know, I had no brand, I had no portfolio, I had no referrals, I had basically nothing. The only thing that I had was a ton of conviction and then a lot of ambition. But the reality is I had very little to back it up, like probably a lot of you guys in my shoes. So the thing is, I had a bunch of predispositions around the sorts of customers and clients to get. I'd watched a lot of content from like these big gurus that were like, you don't work hourly, you don't do this, you don't do that, you tell the customer a price, they accept it, and then you do business. But I had all these presuppositions and predispositions, but when I went out there and I tried to get customers using those approaches, nothing mattered. And so I was actually kind of in that weird, like uncanny valley of no business for a very long time. And it wasn't until I just consciously said, okay, screw it, screw what I've learned before. I'm just going to try and get clients as simply and as quickly as humanly possible, that I was actually able to make some progress. So in my case, what I ended up doing was I opted to go on a freelance platform called Upwork. Now Upwork, big green logo badge. A lot of people have said bad things about it, namely that clients on that platform are super cheap, namely that if you work on Upwork, you'll never really be able to escape their service fees and stuff like that. You can check out other videos that I posted on why I don't think those service fees are really any big deal at all. They currently charge you 10%, maybe 15% of some contracts, but they also deal with payment processing, which is 3%. They also deal with escrow, which is usually a fixed fee. They do a lot for you that makes it really not that much money. But anyway, the point that I'm making is I'd heard all these negative things about Upwork, but then I decided, you know what? Screw market opinion. Let me actually give this a try myself. And that's a recurring theme that you're going to see throughout the rest of this, these 4 phases. So my idea was I was going to front load client acquisition, get client relationships as quickly as possible. And then I'd worry about the shape of these relationships later. I'd worry about optimizing my packages and my retainers and stuff like that after I'd already done some work and had some money. And that turned out great because the main benefit to platforms like Upwork or Fiverr or TopTal or these 1,000,001 freelance businesses is that like when you're a beginner and you have all that debt that I was talking about, one of the main portions of that debt is your sales debt. You probably don't know how to sell. And selling is actually quite a refined science. Like in order to get good at this stuff, it takes a long time. It took me almost a decade to get to where I'm at today. And I wouldn't even consider myself that good compared to some of the other people out there. And the reality is sales is composed of basically at least 3 things, at least. But in my opinion, you need to understand customer problems. Okay. Then you need to be able to eloquently and succinctly state why you have a solution to that problem. And then the customer needs to pick between you and the million other people that have done that. So it's kind of a three-stage problem. I call this the buying ladder. Essentially, Upwork solves two of those for you. And those are the hardest two for initial and beginner salespeople to get. So Upwork, okay, if you think about it, if somebody posts a job on Upwork, Upwork has already solved the problem. Because if somebody posts a job post on that platform saying, hey, I'm looking for an automation engineer, I'm looking for content for my blog or whatever, they already know that they have a problem, okay? Also, you've loosely solved the solution as well, because they usually know the shape of the solution that they're looking for, right? If somebody posts a job looking for an AI automation engineer, they know that their solution is going to involve an AI automation engineer. No shit, right? So you've actually gotten 2/3 of the work done. The only thing you have to do is you just have to convince people as to why you're the best pick for that particular thing. So there's a little bit of nuance there, but the point that I'm making is it just solves a lot of the work for you. In exchange, you pay some connect fee. That's like the way that you essentially make applications on the platform, sort of like credits. And then you also pay them a small little cut of the revenue that you make on a project. Now, my approach to Upwork was very fundamentally different from most other people's. And I learned this from a business partner that I had, Noah. And essentially, the key to making this work for me was not just submitting copy-paste applications to everybody's job post like everybody else was doing. What I did was I created a customized video recording. It was usually between 2, sometimes even 10 minutes, where I'd actually go and I'd solve their problem. So this is a quick example of one that I actually sent.
Hey, my name's Nick. I'm a process automation engineer, and I just came across your posting with somebody to help you with AI and automation for social media. You mentioned basically wanting a way to streamline your social media and your workflows. I thought I'd blow this video out of the park for you and just make it a no-brainer as to why you would want to hire me. You talked about developing AI models, so I'm more than happy to assist you with this. I don't know to what degree we'd actually be developing the AI models, though. I think probably more realistically what we'd be doing is be using pre-existing AI models to generate social media. But a very quick and easy example of the social media automation I set up a while ago was one that generated basically like social media automations using Bannerbear, which is a social media platform that essentially allows you to like create assets automatically. So as this is a quick little example of a social media automation that I put together that basically got a templated image, and then it added some information down here with the name of the company. So I do this sort of thing pretty often, and I'm confident I'd be able to help you with it. It doesn't have to be obviously a real estate brokerage. It could be more or less anything. And then I can also show you how to post it automatically onto Facebook, Instagram, Twitter, LinkedIn, TikTok, etc. Anywho, hope this makes sense. If you have any questions about this or you want to get in touch, just give me a call. We're happy to help. Thanks so much.
So that video was 2 minutes. You could see a bunch more videos like this where I actually sell real Upwork contracts in Maker School. The point that I'm making is this approach immediately sets you apart because you actually spend a few minutes solving their problem. And there's kind of a sneaky benefit to this as well. If you're a total noob like I was, you actually learn how to sell by rote repetition. You become better at articulating the solution and talking. I mean, you're talking into a void, kind of like I'm talking to a camera right now. But you get better at talking about a particular problem and then a particular solution. And there's no cost to it. It's not like you're getting on a sales call and you get super nervous or anything and there's somebody judging you. No, you're literally just talking to your camera. Not to mention, I think talking to a camera is probably one of like the most in-demand and probably best skills you could have. Just look at what it's enabled me to do with my channel. So anyway, the point that I'm making is I got started really quickly, and then I front-loaded client acquisition on a platform that basically everybody else was crapping on, talking about how terrible it was, that I've now made well over $500,000 on, by the way. And I just got going with this Loom video approach where I was just, creating a customized walkthrough of exactly how I'd solve the client problem. I was providing a ton of value up front. Now, once I'd gotten my first few clients, because this worked, obviously, if you do this, like many people in Maker School, you will get your first client in, your first week or so, as long as you're consistent. You send a certain number of videos. Once I'd gotten my first few customers and clients, I would take something like 30 or 40% of all of the earnings that I made from this, and then I just shoved it straight into cold email campaigns, okay? Cold email campaigns being the other up-and-coming technology or approach at the time that was renewed because of AI and personalization, but essentially, I would send several hundred, sometimes 500, sometimes 1,000 cold emails a day to a variety of industries trying to pitch them on my service. And you're probably like, okay, Nick, so which industries did you target? And the reality is I had no idea. I had no idea which industries to target. I had no idea which niche I should go into. I had no idea about any of this stuff. I mean, this is true back when I was going door to door, by the way. It's true when I was selling content with 1 second copy. It's true when I started my automation agency, Left Click. I never knew which niches to target, never had any idea. So what I did instead was I picked like 10, maybe 15, okay? I picked 10 or 15 niches. Then I developed specific offers for each, basically saying, hey, I noticed you're probably having trouble with this, so I'm going to solve this. Hey, I know a big common issue with recruitment businesses is this, so I'm going to solve this. Hey, I know a big issue with plumbing companies is that, so I'm going to solve that. And then I just sent them out to as many people as I possibly could. And obviously my copywriting wasn't half bad, which is why I, got some traction initially. And then from there, I just like ran a retrospective 1 month or 2 months later, and I saw, okay, which niches responded best to my offers? Which, offer has resulted in me booking the most calls? And from there, I was essentially able to refine and find a small subset of niches that worked really well for me. So at this point, what I'd done is I'd basically said, screw everything else, screw my whole business. I'll figure it all out on the back end once I have customers. All I'm going to do right now is focus on getting customers. And then I did a bunch of things that don't scale. I set Upwork profiles up. I submitted a bunch of Loom applications where I recorded videos of myself, right? 10 minutes of video required at least 10 minutes on my end, sometimes more, to do research and to get to the point where I knew what the hell I was talking about. But the point that I'm making is I worried about all of that stuff at the very end. And I just said yes to as many opportunities as humanly possible because I knew that I had a ton of debt that I needed to pay down. As you do this, and as many people in my communities, Maker School, and products and stuff like that quickly learn, when you say yes to a bunch of stuff, you grow very quickly, but you inevitably cap out pretty low as well. And the reason why is because when you say yes to a bunch of stuff, you're usually working with sub-tier clients, and then you're also doing a lot of custom work. Okay. And this is great, again, from getting from 0 to 1, but there's only so many custom projects that you do. There's only so much custom work that you could essentially do. So in my first three months, I landed 8 or 9 clients through the methods that I'm talking about. And these were custom projects that range from $1,000 all the way up to about $10,000 each. You can think stuff like me building out CRMs for, specific, like SaaS company or something like that, or me managing outbound for a recruitment business or something. So anyway, I granted these custom projects for about 6 months. I was hitting, as I mentioned, between $20,000 to $25,000 months, sometimes a little bit more, sometimes a little bit less. But I found that I was hitting a ceiling. And that's really the next stage, hitting a ceiling. And this phase of my business was very important because it taught me a lot about what works, taught me a lot about my own skills and competencies, taught me a lot about what other people do to try and fix this problem. And it also taught me that, with a little bit of ingenuity and with a little bit of systems thinking, you can do more yourself than dozens of people can. And which is why, I'm capable of running such a high margin business. There's nothing unique or special about me. I just thought a little bit about how exactly I was going to set up my business before I did it. And also I was in a privileged position because I was able to take a little bit of my money and experiment and attempt new approaches before actually doing so. And the reason why is obviously because I front-loaded client acquisition. Now I had a little bit of money to play around with. If you guys never even get to the point where you have the money to play around with, obviously you're not going to be able to do this next step. So you do have to do them sequentially. Anyway, so at the time when I hit the ceiling, I was juggling 5 or 6 clients. My sleep schedule was shit. I was stressed out as hell. I was tearing my hair out. If you guys see gray hairs here, I don't know if you guys can, but all of that was due to that period. It's really hard. And this is where a lot of businesses just plateau and they never grow. And so this freelancer ceiling sort of gives you 2 options. Okay. The first is, it's kind of fork in the road. You can, well, I guess there's 3 options. You can continue doing what you're doing and then never get anywhere. And then you can just operate a business at between $15,000 to $25,000 a month. You can get a pretty good lifestyle and still a pretty high margin business. Let's be real. If you're operating at like 80, 90% margins, you're still taking home more than like 90-ish, 95% probably of all the people that are, in your country. So this isn't bad by any means. I think a lot of people probably rest here, not because they can't go further, but because they just say, well, how important is work to me? It's not really that important. So I'm just going to, go surfing on the weekends or whatever and rent really nice cars. That's fine. That's kind of option 1. Okay. Option 2, and this is what I ended up doing, is you try hiring. Now, hiring is obviously where you take everything that has worked for you to get to that point, $15,000, $20,000, $25,000. Then you just try and duplicate yourself. You try and distill all of the knowledge that has allowed you to, operate at your current level and give it to like a mini you. And then you say, okay, now you're going to do the client fulfillment. You're going to do the work B2B. And then I'm going to go find us some more clients. And then that way, we're going to go from $20,000 to $40,000 because there's 2 of us. So I tried this. A number of times when I was going door knocking like a decade ago. All right, I brought on a couple of guys, commission only guys, like most door knocking businesses operate as. And that was where I first realized that like You know how the old adage, like managers are just like a giant waste of time? It's like, how many managers does Coca-Cola have? How many managers does Google have? It's like, oh, they're leeches sucking on the business. No, management is actually very, very important because it's very difficult. It is very difficult to squeeze as much value as you can out of people, to consistently motivate them to do the thing that they signed up to do, to hold them accountable to deadlines and to make sure that they do, the work that your organization needs to have done in order to grow. And, if I'm honest, my management chops just were not it, dog. So, I mean, I tried hiring with my door-to-door business, did not work out. I tried hiring with my writing company, and that was fine because I wasn't actually responsible for the vast majority of the day-to-day management. I tried hiring for my automation agency and my AI company as well. And I got to be honest, I don't know whether it's that I'm not a good manager. I don't know whether it's that I expect too much out of people for the money that I pay them. I don't know. I just have some problem with it, which I'm really grateful for, by the way, because it made me not have to go down this route. But for whatever reason, hiring just did not work. So I spent quite a large amount of my time in that hiring milieu. And yeah, it was okay. It was okay. I'm not going to say that it was like terrible, but 1 month I might have made like $35,000, but now I had to like pay $15,000 to 3 staff members. So it's like, okay, previously when I was solopreneur, I was making $20,000 and it was just me and I didn't have to deal with any management headaches. Now I'm making $15,000 and I'm also responsible for 3 people's, occasional screw ups, training, management. I got to do meetings. I was working even more at that point. And yeah, like my calendar ended up being packed with even more meetings. So like, is that really the sort of lifestyle I wanted to live? No. Not to mention, at the current stage of my ceiling, I was also running into an issue where like a lot of my repeat revenue, like some of my repeat revenue would churn because of the poor quality experience that they had with one of my, one of my contractors or engineers. So this was not a good idea. This just did not enable me to make any money. So the root problem I realized was not necessarily a lack of manpower. Okay. It was not that, I had this thing which enabled me to go from 0 to 20 to 25K a month, which was these custom projects. It's not that I just took that thing and then I scaled it up and doubled and tripled it. Okay. The real problem was that what got me here won't get me there. I can't just duplicate that approach if I want to do something bigger at scale. I needed to find like a fundamentally new way. And so I found that fundamentally new way. And the fundamentally new way was that third route, which I haven't talked about yet. The third route is finding leverage. So the third major phase that I had to go through involved me breaking out of that $25,000 a month ceiling, was creating leverage through productization. If you've watched a couple of my videos on business consulting and sort of systems before, you'll know that I've talked about productization quite a bit. And the variety of leaders that I looked up to that have taught me a lot about what I know regarding productization. But at the time, okay, all I really knew was that I need to take all of the stuff that I'm doing right now, and I just need to list, what am I actually giving clients? Okay. How much of the work that I am doing is actually going towards the end product that my customers are seeing? Okay. What results are my customers paying for? Because it's one thing to like build a custom project where 90% of the work that you put in is invisible and nobody sees it. Okay. And it's another thing to think about it from this perspective, where it's like, what do customers actually see of all the work that I do? Sure, I'm building automations, or I'm writing content or whatever. There's a lot of work that goes into things, but how much of that is actually making it to like the customer's desk, and how much are they actually evaluating how worthy or how much value my service is based off of? So what I did is I basically took all the custom projects that I'd done over the course of the last few months and I broke them all down. Okay. When I broke them all down, I noticed that they were grouping into 3 or 4 major bins. The first was cold email lead gen systems. I was doing a ton of cold email lead gen systems, primarily through Instantly, a couple through other platforms, where basically I would go and I'd find leads for a business. I would scrape them using some sort of scraper that I developed, usually custom. I would process those leads, enrich them. Maybe I'd throw in some personalization here or there. And then I would add them to this big mailbox cold outreach platform and then spam out a bunch of emails. And, because very few people were doing this at the time, because I was doing it for myself, I kind of had like that unfair advantage. And, I ended up delivering a ton of value for these clients relative to the money that they were paying me. The issue was obviously not standardized. Another big thing I was doing proposal automation workflows. So many of you guys have probably seen me build out these proposal generators, but essentially like when you're on a sales call with a customer, quick and easy thing to do in that sales call is for you to have a little form in front of you, you to ask the customer questions like, okay, like what is your name? What is your email address? All right, awesome, cool. So what would you say your major problem is? Then you actually go through and you write some summarized version of their problem. Then you just press okay on a form. And then before the meeting is even done, you have a nice, beautiful proposal generated by AI in your hands that you can give to them. So this is something that very few people were doing at the time. Now it's relatively commonplace, but this is something that, a lot of people wanted from me. data processing and just integrations, just in general, like kind of one-off connectors. Okay, you know, like data pipelines. A lot of people had data in one place and they wanted it duplicated to another place. I realized that, you know, I could group a bunch of these projects together, and then it ended up just being very similar. It was sort of just like a connector, a USB-C port that went somewhere in there, standardized the way that data went from one spreadsheet to another. And then another one was a monthly automation maintenance. So I had a lot of people that were asking me to like maintain systems like content generators and stuff like that. Hey, Nick, can you make a little update here? Hey, Nick, can you make a little update there? And I thought to myself, okay, like why don't I just group this under the umbrella monthly automation maintenance? And so, you know, basically, previously what I was doing was every time I get a new client, I would do a super in-depth consultation with them. I'd ask them all about their needs. I'd walk them through my own process, and which at the time was just a hodgepodge of a bunch of BS, if I'm honest. And then I would go and I'd do their custom thing. But once I realized that these 4 groups of mine are basically just the same thing every time, the only thing is sometimes it's with this software platform, sometimes it's with that software platform, sometimes they want it logged to a Google Sheet, sometimes they don't. When I realized that it was all just the same thing, I realized, wait a second, why aren't I just templating this? Like, can't I just like create templates of all these things that get me 80% of the way there? And then I could still provide the custom experience, but then I could just sell cold email lead gen systems, proposal automation systems, data connectors, CRMs, monthly automation maintenance. Why don't I try that? So, I mean, you know, for a guy that prided himself on automation, I definitely was not automating my own workflow, you know? So for cold email systems, for instance, I developed a very simple framework that could be customized for different industries, but maintained for the same like core architecture. Like it was always basically the same idea. It's like, you know, 4 steps. I would identify the lead source. I would scrape the lead source. I would enrich the lead source, and then I'd like do copywriting and run the campaigns, right? Previously, this cold email system, because it was so customized and I was always rebuilding the damn same wheel from scratch. Sorry, I just got something in my eye. It would take me like 30 to 40 hours to build. It would basically be like a full-time thing, like for one particular client. I don't know. I might make like $5,000 off it or whatever, but like think about it, man. That's a crazy amount of time. How are you supposed to scale your business? If you got 160 hours a month and you spend a quarter of those hours every week, then you can only ever make, you know, 4 times whatever that project is making you per week. In my case, about $20,000. So if I kind of just compare the two, before productization, I would do a custom project. It would cost me 40 hours, okay? And maybe I would do $125 an hour-ish. I'd make $5,000, okay? Meaning that my revenue per hour, my hourly rate, which is all I really care about, is $125. Now, after I productized, I would build a templated solution that gets me 80% of the way there. So now it only takes me 5 hours, okay? 5 hours times my internal hourly rate of $125 an hour means, like, you know, if I hired an engineer to do this or whatever, which I always like to calculate in my head, it would cost me $625 to do, but I would still charge my client $5,000, or maybe I'd make some allowances, $4,000, $5,000 here, okay? So I just want you to think about it. The first scenario was $5,000 divided by 40. That's equal to 125. The second scenario is $5,000 divided by 5. That's equal to 1,000. So my hourly rate had literally skyrocketed to $1,000 an hour with one simple trick that the gurus won't tell you, which is just to make freaking make.com templates. You know, I was suddenly 8 times more efficient. And I just want you to think about that. If my previous cap was $20,000 a month, $25,000 a month, if I just multiplied that by 8, I could be making like $100,000 a month, right? So that's scale, that's leverage. And because of that, you know, and because all of a sudden that stopped being a bottleneck, the amount of work that I was doing, I did lower prices. So instead of me charging $5,000 for that same system, I might now charge $2,500 and make $500 an hour instead of $1,000 an hour. But then I'd get, you know, 1.5 times as many clients. And then I'd also get all the additional benefits that having many customers gives you. Like every customer that comes into your business has what's called a referral multiplier. There's some small chance that if you work with them, they'll give a referral to somebody else to you. So maybe it's like 10%, in which case, if somebody pays you $2,500, they're not actually just paying you $2,500. They're paying you like 1.1 times 2,500, which is 2,750. If you just think about it that way, the customer lifetime value math can get really deep, but I'll leave it there. The point that I'm making is I was able to like make some strategic shifts in terms of how I did my business that enabled me to grow and then reach more people than I'd ever met before. And then my next major step was, you know, I took this system of one-off projects basically that I'd created. And then I started shifting them all from these one-off projects to monthly retainers. And then I also started shifting my monthly retainers into like subscription packages, which did not take me an hour. So just from a bird's eye view, what I'm doing here is I'm not just scaling up my business like most other people think. I'm fundamentally changing the shape and nature of my business as I grow, so that I double and triple and quadruple down on what works. I cut out all the fluff, and then essentially I can still continue growing without having to sacrifice my margins and without having to hire a big, slow, expensive team. So, obviously there's a lot that I can go into detail on that there, but I think I'll just leave it at that. Every approach, every new client, every template, everything that I did was just 100%. Like I turned every one of those things into an asset, and then I took all of those assets, and then, those would help my next client. So my business just became this snowball, which was pretty fantastic. And I consider that true leverage, right? But one thing that I'll say is, and this is the end of phase 3 and the beginning of phase 4, which is where I'm at right now. One thing that I'll say is there are still limitations to this, obviously. The bigger that you grow, the harder that it is to maintain all of this. And so because I thought that there were some inherent limitations to the agency model, I decided I would have to change the shape of my business even further if I were to continue growing as a solopreneur anyway. And that's the constraint that I put on myself. That's what got me to phase 4, which I call content as leverage. So even with my business, which I'd scaled at that point to $72,000 a month, even with my business running efficiently with very, very high margins, I started noticing that, there were only a certain number of clients that I could personally manage. And I did like to personally manage these clients because obviously I have great relationships with them. These people pay me a lot more money when they like the work that Nick does. They're a lot more likely to want to work with Nick after, right? I also noticed there was a direct relationship between the time that I was spending and then my income. And then I also had a lot of reliance on outbound marketing methods by that point, like cold email, for instance, which was doing, the vast majority of my business. I was still doing Upwork applications and stuff like that. But definitely more towards cold email just because of how leverage it is. So because of these, I kind of had a thought to myself, and it kind of all came to a fore. Like, what is the maximum hourly rate that I could make logically as an agency? Not the hourly rate that I am showing to people, but the hourly rate that I'm getting paid, kind of behind closed doors. I was just talking earlier about $1,000 an hour for a system, right? And you can make $1,000 an hour for a system, but how much more can you make? I kind of did some math. I kind of thought a lot about it. I thought a lot about the opportunity and the various systems I could do. And I tried building out a bunch of products and services or whatever. And this lasted me maybe a month or so, but I realized okay, I'm probably not ever going to be able to make more than $2,000, $3,000 an hour, somewhere around there. And that's amazing. That's some people's whole monthly wage. And, if you can make it an hour, fantastic. But, there's some additional nuance there as well. It's okay, you can make $3,000 an hour if you have available work, but can you find that much work? No, your outbound lead generation and you as a sole salesperson do eventually end up being a big bottleneck. Sorry, just getting a call. So logically, I have a ceiling to that hourly rate with this business shape, right? So I'm going to have to change business shapes if I'm going to want to succeed. So I thought about this for quite a bit. I actually ended up taking a trip to Mexico with one of my really good friends. His name's Zach. We went to a small island in the Caribbean, and the whole point was just to unwind and just do a bunch of business reflection and stuff like that. And Zach came from this coaching and consulting background. He came from a background where he was working essentially as the first mate or partner to a bunch of, big dudes that were running their coaching and consulting offers all the way up to, maybe $1 million a month or so. So he inherently understood the scalability of that business model. And, I also being a very intelligent guy, we just kind of rocking back and forth on the rooftop of some Airbnb, with the sun setting, smoking fat cigars. We kind of worked through some of the issues that I was having at the time. And one of the major issues was obviously that hourly rate. Another major issue was, okay, in order for me to sell right now, I'm getting on a call and I'm working through people. And his solution was basically well, listen, what a lot of people are starting to do now, a lot of people with money that have successful agencies is they will start these content brands and they will use these brands as passive sales materials that will sell people in your audience on your value so that you don't actually have to be there in person on a sales call talking them through it. You don't actually have to be the one recording the Loom video you don't have to do one Loom video per person. Okay. You could do one video, sell to 10,000 people. And, he's that's super high leverage. Then you could form some sort of information product. Then maybe you could branch out so that you're not entirely reliant on your agency revenue. And it's not he just gave all this to me in a gift box or whatever. Obviously there was a lot of back and forth and we kind of hammered out exactly how I was going to take that next step. And I'm forever grateful to him for that. But yeah, after that trip, when I got home, I sort of hit the ground running with renewed vigor. At the point, I was making consistently somewhere between $50,000 to $70,000 a month. I had a lot of money and income, and I had a lot of, I had a lot of resources. So when you're at a point where you have a lot of resources, but you're kind of capping out and plateauing, what you have to do is you basically have to take a portion of those resources and you have to invest them in research and development, your R&D fund. Big companies do this all the time. But my R&D fund was YouTube. I was like, all right, cool. So, we talked about content was leverage. We talked about like information products, and then we talked about selling while I slept, essentially. So, what are some ways I could do that? And one of the ways that I thought to do that was YouTube. So, what I did is, well, I actually ended up letting a client or two of mine go just because the time demands were so crazy. I took that additional time and then I spent it directly on recording content every day. And I just did this as a total experiment. It was like research and development, basically, for about a month or so. And I said to myself, I'm just going to take the same principles that have enabled me to be successful here at this agency, which, in large part are consistency. And then I'm just going to do a video every day, just talking about my success, and I'm just going to see where I land. So that's exactly what I did. I started recording consistent YouTube videos on February the 7th. I recorded like 30 until March the 7th or 8th or something like that. Then by the end of the month, I had something like 3,450 subscribers. So my subscriber count had actually gone up a ton, which is pretty sweet. And, obviously, the second that you start having subscribers, you start having distribution, you can start thinking, okay, like now that I have this, what can I do with it? But I want you guys to know that this whole time I was not 100% sure this would work. This is literally just another experiment that I was doing. I was going to experiment with dozens of different approaches, dozens of different platforms, and dozens of different ideas. I just so happened to land on YouTube as my second or third, and then that just so happened to actually work. Okay. So I didn't actually make any money off this for the first couple of months, by the way. The videos were not selling entirely for me. But one thing that I found really interesting that I noted was the people that I was getting through cold outreach, okay, they would actually like Google me and they would find some of my videos and they would watch my videos. And then when they'd come on the call, they'd say something like, hey, it's crazy. I was just watching one of your videos. Can you give me this thing? And I was like, huh. So my sales actually became a lot easier the second that I had my warm content selling for me, basically. Because even if I got somebody totally cold, once they were interested enough to want to sit down on a call with me, what's the number one thing that people will do? They'll obviously Google you. And if the first 5 things are just like links to a video about you building a system, some of them which are very similar to the systems that I said that I was going to build for you, obviously you're a little intrigued. Obviously you watch some of my content. So yeah, what's really interesting is a bunch of my initial subs were actually like people that I had sent outreach to through cold email and stuff like that. And it got so lucrative. Well, it got so interestingly, there was so much serendipity that I eventually started adding lines at the end of my emails, like, P.S. Google me if you're curious, so that a bunch of people that even weren't entirely sure whether they wanted to work with me would still Google me. They'd watch my videos and then they'd come into my funnel. So that was great. Another thing that I talked about with my friend Zach just before I ended up doing this was that content provides compound returns in a way that services never do. Because a service delivered generates revenue once, okay? For the most part. There's some exceptions with some automated systems. But if I created a YouTube video today, I could realistically see returns off of that YouTube video for the next 5 years, assuming it's evergreen content. And that is leverage, right? I've made a lot of money off of YouTube now. But if I stopped recording and stopped publishing today, I would still continue making money off of YouTube for the next 5 or 10 years. It's crazy, right? Like, obviously not all of my content, because some of my content's very time specific, hype specific, bubble specific, whatever you want to call it. But some of my longer content is like, timeless concepts that I will realistically be able to make money off of for a very long time. So yeah, YouTube is, in my case, just ended up being so many different forms of leverage for me. It was a 24/7 sales team that worked while I slept. It was a lead nurturing mechanism. It was it ended up being like a discovery or distribution mechanism. And then it ended up even paying me ad revenue on top of that, which is crazy. Now the ad revenue is like, a very small portion of my total income, but still. So yeah, as my channel grew, I started looking at opportunities to do that information product route that my buddy Zach was telling me about. And I sort of binned it into a few categories. One of them was templates for the systems that I was building. Another one was coaching and consultant services, which was separate from my agency services, which primarily did like implementation. Another one was like I ended up starting a community. Community products are fantastic because they're basically like coaching and consulting, but they're like a MRR based thing, which is fantastic. Like it's seriously crazy revolution. And then because of that, I was able to, massively improve both my distribution, continue doing all the stuff that was making me money up until that point, like with my agency services, but then unlock this whole new tier of products. And I was able to do it this entire time without ever really struggling for or wanting for money. Because one thing that nobody will tell you is if you try starting a business model that is super scalable, like a SaaS company or an information product company, and you have nothing, you're at the start line like I was, it takes way longer to see success than it does if you start something that's less scalable, like a freelancer or an agency outfit. The way that it works is the scalability of a business model is basically a direct odds with the amount of money that you make right off the bat of that business model. So if you really want to get both, this is what I tell people in Maker School and Make Money with Make all the time. If you really want to get both, the key thing that's working today in the mid 2020s is you start a freelance or an agency outfit delivering a service, Then eventually you transition to an information product or a coaching company, teaching people how to do the service. And then once you have a massive distribution pipeline, then you build a software product selling the thing that that service used to do to a bunch of those people that are interested in it, or selling something that helps people deliver that service better. Key point, if you look at basically anybody that's big, this is more or less what they all did and how they all started. Anybody over the course of the last 5 or 10 years now, people that are making $100 million plus, that last bit is really important. And it's something that I'm considering going into eventually as well. So that seems to be the pipeline. Anyway, here are a bunch of ways you can apply these principles to your own business. Because it's one thing to hear me yap on and on, story time for freaking half an hour. And I really appreciate everybody that's still with me. But, most of you guys are at the point where it's like, all right, Nick, how do I actually employ these approaches in my own company and, use them to hit $100,000 a month revenue figures and so on. So I wanted to take all of these high-level strategies and high-level stories and then convert them into like a step-by-step list that you guys could use. Here it is. And it's not specific to AI automation, by the way. You can do this for any business model as long as it's B2B primarily, or at least I have experience with B2B. Step 1 is to start with custom work to understand market needs. Okay. When I say start with custom work, I mean, don't worry about developing a product. Don't worry about developing anything aside from just your ability as a service provider or a freelancer or an agency. So even though custom projects are not scalable long-term, they are the fastest way to just get your foot in the door in an industry because the supply of people willing to do custom projects is so low that naturally the demand for your services will be substantially higher, even if you have no other skills. Pay close attention to the problems that you are consistently asked to solve. These are going to be the foundation of these products that you're going to build later, like they were for me. Which parts of your process as a custom specialist are repeatable? So which ones do you find yourself doing over and over and over and over again? What results the customer values the most? So like when you actually give your deliverable, what are they focusing on and what are they getting? And then how much money are they paying you for the services and the ability to solve their needs? Focus on your hourly rate. Now, the way that I see it is custom work is basically a paid research phase. It's like the market is paying you to very quickly and easily accumulate experience, money and a foothold in the industry. Now, you're still gonna have to do some work, obviously, but as long as you treat this as almost like an information gathering exercise, I find that the work is usually nowhere near as big of a deal. Like when I'm inherently interested about something and I inherently want to uncover and learn more about how to do a product or a service or deal with a new technology, it's not really work to me. It's just, it's fun, it's play. So if you frame that first phase in your mind as play, it'll be a lot easier for you to make it to the second. Speaking of the second is to document everything and start creating templates. So most people will cap out, as I mentioned, and they'll, instead of doing this, hire a team that works off of crappy templates. Instead, record processes for every deliverable. My recommendation is using Loom or Google Doc SOPs. Break these complex tasks down into a step-by-step. So make sure that you have them to the point that basically a monkey could do it. Not because you're going to be hiring monkeys, but because this is important in the age of AI where you can take a step-by-step breakdown and actually hand it to a model and have it get 80% of the way there. And then create reusable templates for everything, from proposals to deliverables to client communications. You should not really be sending customized emails after, I don't know, I want to say like your $25,000 to $30,000 a month mark. The communications that you send, should not be willy-nilly haphazard. You should actually have like a bank of templates where after you deliver a project, you just take your client delivery email, you copy and paste it and maybe make a minor adjustment. If you don't get in the habit of doing this, then your ability to scale past this $25,000 mark is it's very unlikely, I guess. So just make sure that once you make it past that custom work phase and now you're getting more into higher level projects, that you're just relentlessly documenting everything, not because you're going to hire a team. If you do end up hiring a team later on down the line, fantastic. You now have a giant knowledge base. You can hand them basically for free, get them up and running quick, but more for yourself and for this next phase, which is going to be packaging your services into distinct products. Here, you take these custom services that you've been offering and you transform them all with very clearly defined timelines, deliverables, scopes, pricing, and then concrete outcomes and timeframes. Make sure you know everything that there is to know about a particular product and how to deliver it. Once you're at that point, you can basically, the way that I see it, it's like analog versus digital. When you listen to like a record player spit out some amazing music, it's really high def and it's super high quality, right? And there are a lot of people out there that are like, Bluetooth headphones sound so different. I got to get my record in my living room. The reality is 99.9% of people, they'll never be able to tell the difference. And Bluetooth and MP3, these compressed file formats and these compressed technologies that make it really convenient to listen to music. These are sufficient or great for 99.99% of people. Digitize your work. Turn your work from this analog, flowy, artistic thing into a concrete set of steps that you do the same every time. If you do, 99.9% of clients will be more than happy with that. And then you'll be able to copy and paste, like you can in MP3, that same approach into millions of people's businesses as well. So what I mean by this is don't sell social media management anymore. Okay. Sell a 30-day LinkedIn engagement package where you have specific outcomes, specific deliverables, where you have a specific number of posts that you make, and so on and so on and so forth. And then finally, create systems that reduce your time investment. So once you're done with this is where AI and automation basically become force multipliers in addition to the productized solutions as leverage, like I was mentioning just now. So use AI to streamline repetitive tasks. I mean, duh. If you're not already using AI to streamline repetitive tasks, then look through that giant list of step-by-step deliverables and step-by-step guides that you just created and have AI go through and try creating a bunch of assets. Build automated workflows for client onboarding and also client handoff, just in case you never want to be spending more than maybe like 45 minutes to an hour dealing with like the friction points of the entry and then exit of a client through your system. And then ultimately, another big high leverage thing is to create self-serve resources for customers, like create a Google Drive folder where all of their assets will be uploaded to. Create Slack channels per customer where you don't actually have to deliver the thing that they ask you for. They just go to a Slack channel or a Google Drive or some board somewhere and they just see everything that they need, as well as maybe their analytics or their stats or whatnot. We have a couple of additional steps. Shift to recurring revenue models. This is like the MRR-based model like I was talking about, where you go from having the vast majority of your business be these one-off projects into recurring monthly services that deliver consistent revenue to you. You never want to be in a spot where like every month you make $25,000 and then the first day of the next month, your revenue is back down at zero. You want to be at the point where like, let's say you're at 25 grand on the 30th day of the last month. On the first day, maybe, one of your clients churns and now you're down at 20. The gap there is so much smaller and it's so much easier for you to project your revenue, start making plans, then ultimately, implement them over longer timescales than just a month. And then last but not least, the thing that I did that really enabled me to scale past $100,000 a month, I made over $150,000 in revenue last month, was leverage content to attract pre-qualified leads. So choose a platform like YouTube, like LinkedIn, Instagram, podcasts, whatever you do, just pick one, okay, for now. Pre-commit to a 90-day period of producing content on that platform consistently, and then just share your expertise. Now, don't do this if you don't have a business. Don't do this if you're just listening to me right now and you've never started a business or you're at the start line of your company, you haven't made $5,000 or $10,000 or $15,000 a month yet. Don't start here, okay? Because there are 1,000,001 other people that are starting right where you are and they think, oh, I'm going to become a content creator and I'm going to become a millionaire overnight. The reality is there's so much supply that there's very little demand for you. I hate to say it, but unless you have some cool accomplishment like I did when I started my channel, I could confidently say I made $40,000 last month. Here's how I did it. Here's a system that generates me $20,000 a month. Unless you have some notable proof or accomplishment or something that makes you stand out with a megaphone in the sea of broadcast voices, you're not going to make it. So only do this at the very end of your journey. Only do this when your business is already big enough that you can mold it into this really cool content shape like what I've managed to do here. And when you do it, here's some tips to make sure that you nail it. Deliver value constantly. Your value to ask ratio should be 99-1 at least. I recommend even more. When you create content, make sure that 99% of that content is just giving. And if you do have a section in your content where you're asking to receive, just make sure that it's like less than 1% of it, okay? My videos have like small little CTAs sprinkled through them all, but you'll notice they're very organic. I mentioned a product here or there. I mentioned a community here or there. I really don't harp on it. It doesn't even seem like I'm doing any sort of sales. Share your frameworks, share your methodologies, share everything, give people free templates, give people free lead magnets, make sure that everything is as easy as possible for the customer or for your, viewer to take, watch, and then do something with. And then ultimately build a library of content that serves not just as a distribution channel in and of itself, but it'll also help all of your agency and freelance outcomes as well. If you start with, just trying to make it big on YouTube or whatever, you're going to be missing like half the pie because that initial period is where you're going to be transitioning from B2B services, or I should say like agency or implementation services to primarily coaching and consulting ones, right? Like you're going to miss that whole transition period where you could be nurturing leads and helping people solve problems. I mean, all videos are templated consulting if you think about it, right? So it's just another form of standardization and productization similar to what I was doing in phase 3. All right, so that's all I have for you guys today. I think I've yapped for almost an hour now, so I'll leave it. The magic glowing rectangle is telling me I should probably do a CTA here. So yeah, let's wrap it up. I recommend you start with custom projects. Now that got me at about $25,000 a month, but obviously it came with some serious limitations surrounding scale, and I was also tearing my hair out. After you're done with that, you kind of have a fork in the road where you can stay where you are. You can choose to hire, or you can build leverage systems. I highly recommend you build leverage systems. That's what I did, and that's what enabled me to continue growing. And then eventually, after you're done with all that stuff, then you can start thinking about more scalable business models like a SaaS company or maybe an information product coaching or consulting company like me. I think that the most powerful insight from this is that, in today's economy, software and services and artificial intelligence can actually like make up the bulk of a team. If before I needed 10 people to do something, now I have me, but it's like 10x me. And it's not because there's like 10 mini me's or I've trained 10 chat GPTs or whatever, but it's because I've been very intentional about how I set up my business, and I always focus on the highest leverage action first. So, as you grow, that highest leverage action is going to change, of course. When you're at the beginning, make sure that that's always lead gen. When you're at the middle, make sure that's standardization and scaling. And then when you get bigger and bigger and bigger, past $100,000 a month, make sure that's more focused on distribution, and then building a product of some kind that can persist without necessarily you being around to monitor it. If you guys are interested in AI and you guys want to learn how to start your own AI and automation agency using the exact same roadmap that I implemented in my own business, where I actually, like, the whole point of my community maker school is just to implement that roadmap and give it to you on a silver platter with day-by-day accountability, then definitely check it out. Link is the first one that you see in the description. The price is going up. We just hit 1,400 members. So as of the time of this recording, maybe a little bit different when you're watching it. If you guys have any other questions or anything like that, just drop a comment down below. And yeah, do all that fun YouTube stuff, like, subscribe, bump me to the top of the algo. I'll catch you on the next video. Thanks so much.